That season of me like being waiting and just being okay with where I was at was actually, in hindsight, a season of God preparing me for the season that I'm walking in now. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Sierra Schooley, and I pretty much just post all things Christian lifestyle, taking you guys through my life and all the things that the Lord is really just revealing to me in His timing, and in hopes to share it with you guys, to encourage you to invest into the kingdom. And today I wanted to share with you guys the story of this apartment, and it's just such a crazy story because I was looking for some time for an apartment, but I just didn't find anything where I was like, okay, this is the one. It was either like too outdated, or it didn't have an appliance that I wanted, or it was in a bad neighborhood. And I was like super particular with kind of what I was looking for, because I have had 2 apartments previous to this, and I'm just kind of at a point where I really didn't want to settle on the amenities that my apartment had, because I've had 2 different ones. They were very different. And I just wanted like to not settle on where I was going to be. So I kind of just stopped looking. I stopped looking for a while. In our area, everything that I found was just like, kind of like what I've mentioned before, not the right area or not the right appliance. And I kind of just like agreed with the Lord and submitted, and I was like, okay, like obviously this isn't in your timing. And that's a big difference than what my life used to be like. This is the first time in this season of my life and ever that I really can say that I am just submitting to the Lord and what He's doing. And if He's not opening a door, I don't want to force things. So I kind of was just like, okay, Lord, like whatever, I'll stay with family. My living situation was me, my mom, my sister, my grandma and grandpa, and we were all living together in a 2-bedroom house. So I was living in the office with no doors. I just had those like accordion type like bamboo like faux walls, and I had no closet. I had nothing to store anything, and I went from basically like having all the things you'd have in like a really small studio to having no storage for any of that. Thankfully, I didn't have too much stuff, so it worked for the time being, and I feel like it was just a season of me having to be like, okay, like, nothing's changing yet. So, that was okay. That was good. But the way that this all happened is, I was kind of bummed, and I was like, you know what? I've made so many mistakes in my life where I've just not listened to my gut, and I've not listened to that little still small voice. And I finally was just like, I have no idea what is going to come after this. I was super nervous about it. So I ended up breaking up with this person I was dating. It was super short, but it was like a very good, healthy relationship, and he was a healthy person. I'm a healthy, healed person now, so I was like bummed, because I was like, Lord, why are you like allowing this? Because I finally am getting things right, and now I feel like you're telling me it's not the right time. And the way that this all correlates into the apartment is because I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll be able to get an apartment like sometime in the next year, like if things go good. And then I was like, you know what, like I have to do what I know the Lord is leading me to do, which is to break off this relationship and to just continue seeking Him. And I just trusted that the Lord was going to provide in this next season, however that looked. And I did that. And then the next day, I kind of just looked to see, and again, the same thing happened. I was like disappointed by the inventory that was out there. I didn't like it, and I was like, all right, I'm not gonna force anything. I had applied to one place that I was within like the income for. I think I made like 5 times the income. It was a really like cute little spot, but they required a co-signer if you didn't have 5 years of like being a tenant with one landlord. And for those of you that don't know, property management companies are much more like rigorous with who they apply and accept with. So I was like, that's so weird. I don't want anyone to co-sign this for me. Like, this is my apartment. I'm going to be the only one living here. And I don't think that it's wise to have co-signers on many things, because you just never know what's going to happen. And so I was like, all right, like whatever. And literally as I'm on the phone with this lady and she's telling me this news that I'm going to have a co-signer if I want to actually get this apartment, I get this call from my friend Keith. And my friend Keith knows that I do housekeeping and residential keeping, commercial cleaning. And he asks me and he's like, hey, I have this like studio apartment and I'd really like if you could come and clean it. It's brand new, renovated, like never been lived in. Everything's just covered in like drywall and I need you to come and clean it. So I was like, yeah, like of course, like I'll come clean it. Like let me figure out when I can do that for you. And I was like, dang, I wish you would have told me sooner because I just applied and they were like requiring a co-signer and all this stuff. And everything else I've seen, I just don't feel comfortable moving into. I don't want to settle. I know that God has something so good for me. And that's like a theme this last year is like, don't settle. Like, don't settle just because you want to be comfortable. Don't settle because you're scared you're not going to get that eventually, whatever it is. Like, just don't settle for anything in any situation. Even though that sounds like, oh my gosh, so high maintenance or whatever. I think I used to think like maybe you can't get everything you want, but that's honestly the farthest thing from the truth because I think that when we submit our plans to the Lord, of course, God's going to give us his best pick. We're his children. I'm his daughter. He wants the best for me. And Keith was like, well, you know, I actually haven't accepted these tenants that are going to apply to go see it. And I was like, well, let me go see it. Like, I want to go see it and I'll clean it anyways, but let me go and see the studio because it's brand new. I'm going to clean it anyways. Like, let me go check it out and see if I can do it. And I kind of told him like, you know, income, all those things. And he was like, yeah, like, I'll pick you. Like, I will pick you as the tenant if you like it. So I came in and immediately I was like, this is so nice. Like, this is so nice. I would have never, like, this is the nicest place I've ever lived in. Like, the accommodation of what it is, like, everything is white, like how I like it. The walls, like, you can't really tell probably on video, but they're not textured, but it looks like almost like a clay, like with like the shaving on it. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to do that or what the terminology is, so I probably sound like a goofball, but yeah, it looks really good. The closet was really big. It had all the appliances. It had a separate washroom. It was brand new. The floors are like dark black / gray. It had a half a wall for like the bedroom because it's a studio, so there's no bedroom. It's not a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. It's like a studio. So, but there's like a sense of privacy because of like the faux wall, and then the bathroom was beautiful. Everything was brand new. Like, it had never been lived in before. And I was just like thinking about how crazy it was that as I was realizing that it wasn't going to work out with this other place I was going to rent, and I was just going to continue to have to live in the situation I was in, which was a good situation. I was so thankful for that little space. But I was like, Lord, like, I know this next season I am ready to grow. Like, I'm ready to grow personally more. I'm ready to grow in my business more. And I don't feel like I have the space to do it. And it's so funny because as I'm like giving up my want and my desire, God is like listening to those prayers that I'm praying and also like receiving my submission of my plans. And I was just reminded that God listens to everything that you want. When you go to him and pray about the things that you desire, if it's a godly desire, the Lord wants to fulfill that in your life. He wants to give you all of those things. He desires to see us thrive in this life, you guys. It's like he is that good father. Like the song goes, you're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I am loved by you. And I just was reminded, like, he's so good because here I am like, okay, like finally at a point where I'm like, you know, I will not fight what the Lord is doing anymore. Like, I am sure some of you guys can relate. I just was like, okay, whatever. Like, it's just not going to work out. I'll just live with family forever. And like, I'm only 23. I was 22 at the time, right before I got the apartment. And I turned 23 here in the apartment. But I was just like, this is so crazy. Like, it's everything that I wanted and the Lord just provided. And we had to negotiate a little bit because I did do real estate. I still have a real estate license and I still have it hung, and I like did negotiable comps in the area, and I was like, honestly, like this is kind of steep. It's a little expensive. I've seen what other rentals are going for, and I think what you're charging is a little steep. And I was like, regardless of it being renovated, having a private driveway, like it's still very, very steep for our area. And, I wasn't being rude. I was just like, I know, like I would know more than others to do price comps before I agree to anything because of doing real estate. And he was like, well, like in that case, what I'll do is I'll give it to you. It was listed for $1,650 plus utilities. So utilities are so expensive right now. That could have easily been like $1,850, like easily. And he was like, okay, I'll give it to you. Utilities included. I'll include that in the price. I'll give it to you for $1,600 flat. And I was like, that is so good. Like that was my budget. That was like more so like the top of my budget, but also I had to consider like it's brand new. It's never been lived in. I have everything that I need. Like this is such a beautiful space. I was thinking about like my channel, like being able to record here in like this cute little space, right? And so it was everything that I wanted. Like I even had like a washroom. Now the only caveat to that was it had hookups, but there was no washer and dryer yet. So that's like, $800 for like the cheapest, most basic washer and dryer. And I was like, that's still such a deal. And like I am in a position where I have like cash to do all of that. And thank God, like it's all because of the Lord. Like that season of me like being waiting and just being okay with where I was at was actually, in hindsight, a season of God preparing me for the season that I'm walking in now. And it's an answered prayer that I'm walking in right now. And it's just so crazy that the season of me like waiting and just growing like slowly ended up preparing me for the season that I'm in right now. And so we ended up agreeing on the terms of the lease, and then I was able to sign that day, and it was just the coolest thing ever. And it was like this thing that I wasn't expecting, and I was just like okay with not kind of like, I feel like I was kind of in my mind allowing myself to be like, all right, like this might never happen. Like I was almost defeated, but at the same time I was like, I trust that the Lord is going to provide everything that I need in my life. Like I just believe that because he's done it this far and he's going to do it again. And his name, Jehovah Jireh, literally means the God who provides. And I'm reminded of the parable in Matthew about like if the birds of the air are going to be fed and going to be provided for, and like the grass and the flowers are going to be clothed in beauty, then of course God's going to provide for you. Like you're his bloodline. We're his creation in his image. Like how much more so is God going to provide for you? And that's why we shouldn't worry about the troubles of tomorrow, because today has enough troubles of its own. And I was just like reminded that God does provide, and it might not be in our timing and what we expect. And, that season of waiting was like not always fun. But now I get to come home to my cute, beautiful apartment. And even though it was a season of waiting, I'm so glad because I learned so much. But now I have so much more gratitude for what I have, because I see the testimony of this apartment. Because it's like, if I wouldn't have had that season of waiting, like this wouldn't have been something that I could have just been like, oh, I did this on my own. Like it is very obvious, it's very apparent that the Lord provided this for me. And one more thing that I really wanted to point on was the washer and dryer, and then these little Scrabble words that I got. And you're probably like, how does that have anything to do with an apartment? But let me tell you this story because this is crazy. So I ended up signing the lease, and Keith is a really great guy. Really great guy. We have lots of mutual friends. And he ended up texting me and being like, hey, don't worry about buying a washer and dryer. Like I'll throw in a new washer and dryer for you. And I was just like, what are you even talking about? Like, what in the world are you even saying? Like, you lowered the rent, included utilities, and then like you're giving me a new washer and dryer. And I was like, is this even real? Like, is this even happening right now? Because I just think like God supersedes like his what he delivers is like so much more than we could even ask for. And that's what I was reminded of. And it was just such a crazy experience. And I just felt like the Lord was like, here is this like gift. And I want you to like enjoy this. And this last year, if you guys have watched any of my other videos, has been in 2023, the word for the year was obedience. And I feel like the Lord is truly blessing my life because of my obedience. And the word tells us that those who are obedient and those who obey the Lord, they are blessed. And those who are righteous, they are blessed. And I am just like amazed at, I used to think that life was like gonna be just equally as hard and as dark as a believer. But it's like that's so far from the truth, because when you are living and abiding in God's will and submitting your life to him and living in obedience, he will bless you in ways that you didn't know you could be blessed. And it is as though we, go through these trials, and even though we go through these trials, the Lord gives us so much joy, and having that relationship with the Lord gives us so much joy, even greater than the world ever could, outside of not having a relationship with the Lord. And it's just like this season has blown my mind completely. And this apartment has just been like the biggest blessing ever. And this is like such a reminder to those of you who are waiting or in a situation like this, because I remember watching videos of other YouTubers and like people talking about how they got this apartment and they got this house, and it was like a miraculous work of the Lord. And my encouragement to you is do not stop praying about these things. Do not get discouraged because it's not happening in your timeline, because God's timeline is better than our timeline. There's things that we need to experience within the timeline that God has for us that are going to help us to become the women and men that God desires us to become. And there's so many things we learn through life, going through seasons of difficulties, going through seasons of trials that we don't understand it then, but it's pulling us closer to the Lord so that we can grow and become who he wants us to be. And I feel like the Lord will give you tests throughout your life. And one of the tests for me was always my living situation, because I always felt like since I was young, I've shared before, I had like a really interesting childhood growing up. I was living in multiple homes with my grandparents, with my mom's first husband, with her second husband, with a guy that I had dated in high school, and then with a roommate, and then by myself, and then back with family. And it was like the one thing I wanted was a space that was just mine. And I can honestly say up until this point, this is the first time, although I've lived on my own twice before, this is the first time that I feel like God has provided a foundation in my mind and in my emotions that's unshakable, that's going to allow me to truly grow in this place. Because before, I wasn't emotionally spiritually very stable. Like I was like the house on sand, right? Something would happen and it would knock me to the ground completely. And I can truly say and honestly say that those seasons prepared me and allowed me to go through building a foundation in the Lord. And now the Lord has given me this beautiful apartment. And I just want to encourage you guys, don't be discouraged if things don't happen in your timeline, because there's something that the Lord's trying to teach you. And maybe it's patience, maybe it's deepening your relationship with him, depending on him, getting rid of some of the sinful things in your life, getting rid of some of the relationships, getting rid of some of the bad habits, building up that foundation and building your house and your life on that solid foundation. So when the flood and the storms come, you're going to be unshakable. And there was these words that I bought, these little Scrabble letters from this place called Loved Vintage in Yucaipa, where I live. And I remember a time when I was writing down goals and things that I wanted, and I bought these letters, and it spelled out G-O-D, God, and then D-I-D, did. And I bought those letters for a completely different purpose of like proclaiming that like God did this. But while I was moving, I found those letters. And as I found those letters, it was like the weirdest, most surreal thing ever. I literally remembered, like, vividly going into that store, buying those letters, and just indulging myself in the promises that the Lord made to me. And the Lord has made the same promises to you, because if he promises something in his word, it's just as good as it is to you as it is to me. And it's true. And he is not a God of falling through on his word. And I just was overwhelmed by like a flood of like joy, and I have never felt more understood and taken care of by God in my entire life, because my whole life was, up until this point and this year, full of striving for a relationship, striving to have a good apartment, to make a good living, all these things. And I bought those letters as like a solid proclamation, like God did this in my life. And I know now, and I hang those letters in my house right now. I'm looking at them on my kitchen counter, and God did this. And I see this now, and it's like, okay, this is a huge testimony, like, to share to other people. And it just goes to show, when we don't see the full picture, God sees the full picture. Because when I was buying those letters as a early proclamation of all the things that God has done and did, I was just trusting. I was just believing. I couldn't see what was going to happen. I didn't know what was going to happen. And although some of those things still haven't happened yet, this is one of those things. So I just love you guys so much. And I hope that you are encouraged, because God sees you and he knows the longevity of what's going to happen in your life. He sees the bigger picture. And if you're in the storm right now and waiting on promises that God has made to you, don't give up. Do not give up. Do not walk away from your relationship with the Lord, because sometimes it just takes long suffering. This is a race that we're running in our relationship with the Lord, and we need to have endurance. And I just want to share this testimony of having this apartment, because it's such a special testimony to me, because there's so many things that I just see God's hand in, and there's so many things that like the Lord has just revealed through me being here and being in a safe place where I can grow and heal and recover and overcome this next season because of this apartment that he's given me. And now I can make all these YouTube videos. I have a beautiful apartment to make these YouTube videos in, and I can grow my business here, and I can sit down on my couch in the morning and drink my water and have my coffee and just live a life that honors him. And I just love him, and I know he loves me, and I know he loves you. And I hope that you guys are encouraged by this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. If God's done something like this in your life, I want to hear about it. Tell me if he's done something like this in your life. And don't forget, like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.